For those older devs, how does the current job market compare to 2000s .com bust? I was a child. Tell me the tales of when you were in the 2000s to help us youngins understand your perspective of what may come in the future. Technology is the future of humanity. As such, I expect the tech industry to come back at some point. The only question would be how long it would take. A lot of people want to extrapolate and assume that things are linear, things going down forever, but that wouldn't make sense to me. The universe has a curvature with peaks and valleys, in my opinion. I personally was not working in the 2000s .com bust. I was 4 years old, so I cannot personally answer this question, but I'm going to read the comments and see what other people are saying. But before I do that, I don't necessarily think the tech industry is gone by any means. I think that's a wild assumption. For sure, we have massive layoffs. For sure, companies are trimming the fat, and the job market is becoming slightly more competitive with the added new graduates that are coming into the market. Positions are sort of having hiring freezes, and companies aren't scaling because of lack of VC funds. So I get it. But the tech market is still there. There's still tons of money to be made. It's just getting more distributed across the globe. It's not just concentrated in the Bay Area or New York or Seattle. It's slowly getting more distributed across the world. So I would encourage you to start applying in other countries if you're unemployed right now, in other cities or other states if you're in the US. Broaden your horizon because there's tons of opportunities there. You just need to look for it. So now let's look at the comments and see some older folks answering this question to get some insight. Back in the .com bust, it was way worse. I graduated from one of the top CSCE schools, so computer science, computer engineering, and many brilliant friends couldn't find work. This is also true today. I have a lot of friends who graduated from school still can't find a job. Older friends who already had jobs were laid off and went without work for a year, only to eventually get jobs paying half of their original salary. So this is a concern. If you go without work for a year, that means your emergency fund needs to be more than a year. For some of us, that could mean if your expenses are 5 to 6K like it is for me, that could mean almost $70,000 to $80,000 liquid cash. So that's something to consider. Many thought it was the end of growth in tech. I was lucky. I was working through college for a company that didn't grow rapidly during the boom. So you want to work for companies that don't grow rapidly, and this holds true even today. The reason is because the companies that grow too fast are also the ones that do the most layoffs and are also the ones that trim the most fat. So you want to go for a slow and stably growing company. A good example of a really big company that does this is Apple. Apple is notoriously known for focusing on stability, focusing on very slow and long-term growth rather than just quickly hiring and firing like Amazon and Meta does these days. So consider finding companies like Apple. They exist in all shapes and sizes. We're talking small to medium-sized startups. We're talking big tech companies. So just keep a lookout for these companies. The job market is nothing in comparison. Thought it is tougher than it has been in a while. Thought it is tougher than it has been in a while. I'm not sure what he exactly means by this. But let's look at other people, what they're responding to this. I heard stories of people with PhDs and CS uncommon back then from top tier universities were submitting applications to Circuit City. PhDs doesn't necessarily guarantee a job. Honestly, sometimes it actually hurts you from getting jobs because you're so hyper specialized in one area, and employers typically think you'd want to ask for more money, or you'd come in with some type of arrogance, or you'd be too smart or too skilled for the job. So this isn't really a good indicator to measure against the market because PhDs aren't always as employable as people think. Blast from the past, I graduated from a no-name school and started on master's when I couldn't find a tech job. I worked at Circuit City while taking classes. Sometimes I think about one extended warranty I sold to an old lady on a $40 phone. Still bugs me 20 years later. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, but still, yeah, it is shady selling random shit to random old people that don't really need it. Let's continue down the rabbit hole. The .com bust was brutal. Cost my dad his retirement and me my job. The .com bust is magnitudes worse than it is today. I don't even think it's comparable. I think it's a joke to. I think it's embarrassing for us to even compare today to the .com bubble. I was 4 or 5, and I hear stories from my parents and I hear stories from other people. The way they describe it, working without pay no work for an entire year, companies just wiping out, not even layoffs. They just went from 100 to 0. That's just insane. Maybe losing your job, but still have to pay mortgage to keep a roof over your head as a start. Try selling BTI and S&P when it's 40% down to pay bills. Hurts like hell, and that's how most people got wiped out in 2008. The cycle is repeating with so many cocky kids on Reddit now who keep assuming that their jobs are safe and they can keep investing during a downturn. I don't like his wording, but he's kind of right. The cycle is repeating, not to the same magnitude for sure, but people people will have to sell off their investments to pay off their mortgage if they're not being employed for an entire year. It's going to happen. I don't exactly know the details or the impact of how badly it's going to affect the economy, but we also have to consider back then, 2008, mortgages were significantly cheaper while interest rates were really high. So I guess if you consider it relative to their income back then, yeah, it was pretty expensive, but that's something to consider as well. Our mortgages are insanely high now. Our rent costs are insanely high. Our cost of living is just higher than it used to ever be, versus our income hasn't scaled at the same level. So if we lose a job for a year now, we're going to be screwed. But I don't necessarily think you're going to be unemployed for a year, especially if you're good at your job. For me, most of my friends that are relatively strong engineers that got laid off have been unemployed for a maximum of 2 to 3 months. That's what I've seen on average. But again, that could be biased based on the people I hang around with. If I'm hanging around with top performers, and then there are other sides of the puzzle, maybe they're not getting jobs in 2 to 3 months. Let's wrap this up with one more comment. Sounds quite similar to the current situation, except that you're on the other end. You're now one of the experienced people. I've interviewed people with a ton of experience, like one working before in leadership positions, like had applied for senior titles after a year of no work or after a layoff. People are ready to do amazing things for a job, like super commute hundreds of kilometers several times a week. It's in recovery right now, but what I saw was brutal. Yeah, also myself, it was hard for me not to get a great offer after 1 or 2 interviews, even if I botched some. Now I've had truly stellar performance on lots of interviews that didn't result in an offer. Fresh grads, holy moly, these 4 people never stood a chance. Again, a lot of truth in this post. You have to broaden your horizon. You have to try a lot harder now as the job market is in its downturn. But again, the tech market is not gone. The opportunities are there. You just have to look elsewhere. You have to be more creative. You have to stand out even more. And eventually you will land a job. So I don't want you to lose hope, but I want you to recognize that the job market is tougher and you're going to have to make up for that by cutting slack. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.